Just what is greenwashing? Greenwashing is defined as the practice of promoting environmentally friendly programs to deflect attention from an organization's environmentally unfriendly or less savory activities. As the contemporary environmental movement built momentum in the mid to late 1960s, undermining the public trust in many corporations, newly green corporate images flooded the airwaves, newspapers, and magazines. This initial wave of greenwash was labeled by former Madison Avenue advertising executive Jerry Mander and others at the time as eco-pornography. Mander was the first to really see what was going on in the corporate world. In the 1960s, businesses sensed that people were becoming more concerned with the environment and the way it was being treated. So, in an attempt to shut the movement down before it even began, the greenwashing movement began. In the late 1960s, the ads were mostly about how the companies were researching anti-pollution. In the late 1960s, the ads were mostly about how companies were researching anti-pollution solutions to their problems, while in the meantime, they were mostly ignoring the problem. In the 1970s, America adapted a new holiday called Earth Day to create awareness of the environment. It seemed at the time that the greenwashing by corporations was working well, but in the 1980s, events like Chernobyl and the Exxon Valdez oil spill made the world take another look at businesses' actions towards the environment. While Exxon had its problems with oil spills, Chevron started a new campaign called People Do.
In a den high in Montana's Blackfeet country, a grizzly settles for a long winter's nap, unaware that down below, people with motors and machinery will explore for oil through deep winter. But before she wakes, the people will be gone. The explored land will be replanted so it will soon look as if no one had ever been there. Do people sometimes work through the winter so nature can have spring all to herself? People do.
While these ads were running, people began to believe that Chevron was one of the only oil companies on the side that saves the environment, and people believed it. Under the facade of being an environmental company, Chevron was an industry leader of offshore drilling and also begun exploration in the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge. Chevron has also been linked to over 200 Superfund sites by the EPA. Once people became wise to Chevron's scheme, they began a nationwide boycott of Chevron and started groups to raise money for the environment in a sum of $1.3 million. Greenwashing isn't just limited to advertisements, it also goes into corporate logos. Look at BP, for example. Their original logo looked like a highway road sign with the initials BP right in the center. But as of late, they've changed their logo to a green and yellow flower that makes them appear more environmental. This may fool the novice, but most people have not been fooled. With the recent oil spill in the Gulf of Mexico, most of the people in America, as well as the world, don't seem to trust their greenwashing ways anymore.
No oil has flowed into the Gulf for weeks, but it's just the beginning of our work. I'm Iris Cross. BP has taken full responsibility for the cleanup in the Gulf, and that includes keeping you informed. My job is to listen to the shrimpers and fishermen, hotel and restaurant workers, and find ways to help. That means working with communities. We have 19 centers in 4 states. We've made over 120,000 claims payments, more than $375 million. We've committed $20 billion to an independent claims fund to cover lost income until people impacted can get back to work. We'll keep looking for oil, cleaning it up if we find it, and restoring the Gulf Coast. I was born in New Orleans. My family still lives here. BP is going to be here until the oil is gone and the people and businesses are back to normal, until we make this right.
Even though greenwashing has been around for over 50 years, not much has been done to combat it. So much money is poured into keeping the average person out of the loop that people just believe what they hear. When you look at greenwashing with a microscope, it can be broken up into 7 different categories called the 7 sins of greenwashing. The first sin is the sin of the hidden trade-off. Advertising based on a narrow aspect of a product while not reporting its entire environmental impact. Basically, this is when the company chooses only to show you how they are striving to help the environment in one place, but completely ignore how they are harming the environment in others. It basically comes down to leaving information out. which may cause a consumer to make the misinformed choice. The second sin is the sin of no proof. It's a product's claims about being green that cannot be proven with easily accessed data. This is very common. Companies could just claim their product is harmless to the environment but offer no proof to substantiate their claims. They also choose to make the information hard to find so that consumers just believe their claims. The third sin is the sin of vagueness. Green claims so poorly defined that you can't follow up and prove it. Similar to the sin of proof, in this case they use such vague language that even though you may be able to prove that it may harm the environment, it doesn't matter because the language was so vague that they can claim they did not mean that, but something completely different. The fourth sin is the sin of irrelevance. Green marketing about the environmental improvements may be true, but their impact is so marginal that it makes no sense or is already required by law. This one is easy for companies to seem more environmental. For example, some companies claim to be CFC free, but it is irrelevant because since 1997, CFC have been phased out and outlawed, so it really has no meaning or bearing anymore. The fifth sin is the sin of the lesser of two evils. Environmental claims that a product may be greener than another product in its category, but that simply distract consumers from the fact that the whole product category is just plain bad for the environment, like organic cigarettes. The sixth sin is the sin of fibbing, which pretty much is self-explanatory. This one is a lot less common than others because it may have direct consequences. The seventh and final sin is the sin of worshipping false labels. Marketing and artwork that gives the impression of a third party or green underwriter endorsement when in fact the product is not. After all of these sins, the question still remains about how one can protect themselves from being misled by greenwashing. The best way to make sure the product you buy is telling the truth is to check its certification. There are a number of highly reputable programs that certify particular products as beneficial to the environment. Certification programs vary in terms of cost as well as the level of assurance they can provide. Some are very reliable, but others are little more than sophisticated examples of the very greenwashing they claim to be preventing. Therefore, it is important to know which certification programs are reliable and why.